Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining this webinar. We have Kai Stenberg with us today, and we are especially excited to have him with us today because he is truly an expert in his field and he has some great information to share with us. So again, this is Kemp Technologies. My name is Frank Yu. I'll be kind of just acting as a host and moderator for this, but Kai is going to be delivering all this great content. And the topic for today, of course, again, is migrating, upgrading, and securing Microsoft apps for 2020 and beyond. Because obviously there's a lot of great things going on and interesting things that we have to deal with in 2020, as we all great information. Give you a little background on Kai Stenberg. He is a chief consultant for blinQ in Norway. He has been working with Microsoft apps and with these technologies for many years. Side note, he is happily working on his fitness and has been losing a lot of weight and been doing a lot of exercise in his spare time this past year. I guess that's a great thing to do with this work from home pandemic strategy. You got to do something with yourself. So I appreciate and completely understand where Kai's going. So having said all that, I'm going to pass the baton over to Kai and let him give you all the information that you need. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Let us start the show. My name is, as you know, here we go, Kai, and today we are talking about migrating, upgrading, and securing Microsoft apps. We're going to speak a lot about how to do stuff and whether it's time to end some servers, what we are going to do, and so on. Let's roll the show. First of all, I'm Kai, 52 years old. As mentioned, work for blinQ and have done that for almost 4.5 years. The company is 4.5 years. We're going to speak about whether the TMG forefront, that is dead. The Kemp Loadmaster is more than TMG. Optimize app experience. What does customers say when they're planning and have done migration to Kemp? And we're going to speak a little bit about always on VPN versus direct access versus regular VPN connections. And of course, since I love Microsoft Teams, I'm going to tell you a little bit on how to migrate from Skype for Business on-prem to Teams. So that was the agenda. I worked with Skype and Skype solution, link solution, and that kind of stuff since 2010, and Microsoft replacement for TMG for the last 5-6 years. Microsoft TMG is died in April this year, has been kind of without support since April. Solutions when changing certificates and so on is dying, and people, and especially you as a customer, need to do TMG replacement. I work also with Teams and transforming people from Skype for Business on-premise to Teams with enterprise voice, have a deep understanding of direct routing, and also helping customers to secure and to do load balancing in their data warehouse, data networks, and by using Kemp. TMG is gone. Microsoft has ended the support in 2015, and now in April they quit the extended support. That means you don't have any more patches, no more updates, and it's time for an alternative. We see many customers out there has started to move on. replacing the TMG with Kemp as a reverse proxy. And if you are concerning to get your TMG offline, you can, for example, go to Kemp and download a 30-day free solution, and then start building your rules, and I will help you. And the Kemp team is also there to help you, because Kemp has a fantastic support, even though you are on the trial version. The Kemp Loadmaster works as a reverse proxy, but it also works as a load balancer. It adds security to your network and continuous support and updates, and they also have a single sign-on solution. You will have access to 24/7 support, new versions, add-on securities, and so on. So that's very, very important to remember. When you're talking about replacing TMG, seen from a Skype perspective, we often talk about the meet and the dial-in URLs. You can access them, and what you actually do is, with Skype, you do a reverse proxy, so that you transfer the traffic to the server. You can use the Kemp as a load balancer. I will get back to that a little bit later on how and why, so that you understand that kind of part. And we see often many customers now changing from the TMG because things stops working, because they have changed certificates and that kind of stuff, and they want to add more security to their network. The ESP Security Package. When running Kemp, you can place the Kemp in your network, and you can use it to add the security. One important security package that you need to buy from Kemp when you're talking reverse proxy is the Edge Security Package. The Edge Security Package gives you higher security, single sign-on, persistent logging, endpoint authentication for pre-authentication, LDAP authentication for the load master into the Active Directory, basic authentication from client to the load master. And this is very important. Even though for Exchange servers, you might access the Exchange CAS service from your mobile phone, you have external authentication and so on. And as I mentioned, pre-auth authentication, the alternative for TMG, of course, single sign-on. Reverse proxy to handle the URL, both for Exchange, and you want to control that part, also for the link server or other web application where users type in, for example, HTTP instead of HTTPS. You want to redirect the traffic so it goes on to more secure using the certificates and so on. That's where this Edge Security Package hits you. And of course, multi-factor authentication is also supported. And the step for replacing your TMG. One way, visit kemp.ax, register Kemp ID. It's recommended that you use, for example, an ID that is not personal but belongs to the company, which means, for example, support@company.com or something else that's going to live. So when you get the information about the updates and so on, you will understand why. And download your version for your virtual platform, for your hypervisor. Install, follow the instructions. Add the IP, certificate, and so on. And you will get 30-day free trial, no cost. You will have access to fantastic support. You'll have access to the templates. And when you have logged in to your Kemp, you can start to look at your rules on the TMG, rebuild those rules on your Kemp, configure the service according to the instruction and so on, and do the testing. See if the traffic runs through the TMG replacement and that your rules works on the Kemp so that everything works. Then when you have done your testing, change the DNS pointer, try to access, see if the rules flow, and the page and the web, and do the same on the next rule. And so you're going on. And if you are unsure and how to configure all this, then you can contact Kemp support, fill up a case, your serial number, and you will get a support technician calling you back and help you fix the solution. Or you can call your Kemp partner and they also will help you. So Kemp has also lots of templates on the website for all kinds of stuff. You don't have to invent the wheels again. It's there. Why should we run a Kemp Load Master? Many customers that I've seen today have already started to move from a solution that they have. They can have a DNS load balancing solution. They want to add more security to the networks. We have seen that people have started to use or replace their TMG, their big IP, their NetScaler, because price is one thing, function, and what are you using your solution to? What kind of things do you want the solution to do? A load master is not just the load balancer, but it adds on security, the ESP, the TMG replacement, reverse proxy, and so on. All this stuff, it adds on the web application firewall to secure the portals and that kind of stuff. And hardware load balancing is much smarter than DNS load balancing. I have seen, and I tried out and to check the difference between DNS load balancing and hardware load balancing, how much faster it switch between the two environments. And from what I've seen is that when you have hardware load balancing, the switch is happening in milliseconds. If a server goes down or the load balancer goes down, if you have two units with the load master, for example, you can do maintain on the one, and it moves the traffic to from the master to the slave, and so on. I have seen and done some testing regarding to DNS load balancing, where we've seen the part that if you are in a Skype environment and you have an enterprise solution with 3 front-end servers, and you take down the one front-end server and you have DNS load balancing, it takes a minute and sometimes up to 2 minutes before it's figured out that the one server is down. And then if those users who are on that server are sitting in a call or a meeting or something, they will lose their connection. And it can be a bit critical to have the solution down for 1 to 2 minutes. If they had a hardware load balancer, then of course the users wouldn't notice that kind of thing. And of course, you have the templates. Templates are built to make the day easier for you, so that if you want to deploy, for example, an Exchange Server 2019 in a hybrid, that you want to use the Exchange environment, you have templates for it, so that you just adding the rules, installing the template on your Kemp, and if you have an HI with a master and a slave, you do the upload on the master, then it automatically replicates to the slave, which means all the things you do on the master, it replicates to the slave. One tip for the future, if you are connected to Kemp, every time you go in to do a change, take a backup. It's always good to have a backup. And of course, the support, 24/7, 365. You can put a support ticket, and they are working following the sun. So that's also very good. Many customers has already switched to Kemp. There are lots of customers that just move over. But we often see in lots of places that TMG is still running. This summer, I had a customer called the Norwegian Research Council. They were on Kemp, and they were on TMG, and the TMG suddenly stopped working. And there was a bit of hectic, and took the bus out there and downloaded the Kemp, installed it, got the web pages up and running again, and they were back on. And nowadays the customer is installing and adding more services, more web services to the Kemp. And of course, they run the Kemp security package. We have lots of case studies on kemp.ax. Just type it in to your browser and read the case studies. Sundsvall kommun in Sweden has done this already. They have the ESP package, and it was just to replace TMG and of course Exchange Security. Unicode solution running the Kemp on a Meteor license. That means they pay for the traffic through the Kemp and can add on as many load masters and using that kind of solution. The Meteor license is very good for paying as you go and paying as you grow. And it's quite good solutions. Read their customer case and studies, and we sure can help you to figure out whether it's a Meteor solution you need or it's a fixed solution. Deltian College runs ESP package already. Use its load balancing and that kind of stuff also. So they have done quite a good job with it. And of course, the moral of this story is that Microsoft will not support TMG any further. If you call Microsoft support to ask help with your TMG, you will get, no, we can't help you. That product is dead in a good way. But according to customers, Kemp is easy to install, and you will get fast and easy installing. When moving to Kemp with ESP, it gives you all the security, application templates, helps you. Full support even when you are on the trial. So even if you download the trial version for 30 days, you will get full support. I'm not sure if there are so many others out there who can give you full support when you are on the trial version. You can add new services without downtime. It's easy to add, and customers can use their Kemp license when moving to public cloud. For example, you are based on you have your Kemp running in your data center, and then you start to plan to move, for example, to Azure or to Amazon or some other public cloud, and you want to bring your Kemp with you into, for example, Azure. Well, no problem. You can buy a Kemp and you can transfer your license from your on-prem solution to your cloud solution. So that is one of the great stuffs with Kemp. And it's easy to reuse your license. One tip when you start to install your Kemp, you put up all the basics. Do me a favor, please change the admin password. Read the documentation and you understand why. Because if you install one Kemp, you install a new Kemp, it has the same admin password. And if you want to put your Kemp in your out in the public so that it can be accessible from the public, turn off those features that gives the opportunities to log into the Kemp from a public IP, just so that it has to be on your internal net, and change the admin password. That's very important. When we are talking about security, since the new normal is to work from home, I think that it's very important that we also think security. And with security, we are talking regarding from the Kemp. We see that lots of company has VPN access, traditional VPN. But we also see that most of us has moved to Windows 10. There are still some companies, unfortunate, who are on Windows 7. And we have seen that many now are moving from direct access, who was a part of the future. But now with Windows 10, we want to use Always On VPN. Always On VPN gives you some good things to be sure of. And use multi-factor authentication every time you access Office 365 services. As long as you want to access, for example, something in Azure, your Teams, your mail, your SharePoint, CRM, Dynamics, and so on, use multi-factor authentication. And if you are sitting in an internet cafe or something, or working from home, which is the new normal, always use always on VPN to secure data. Windows 10 and always on VPN uses IQ version 2 protocol. That gives you the best performance and the highest security when you compare compared to the TLS protocol. It's important also that when you're running the Windows 10, and as you will see on the next slide, where we compare this information about direct access, traditional VPN, and always on VPN. What we see here is that in the traditional VPN, it doesn't do Azure AD integration. Yes, it does modern management. You don't have to be domain joined and so on. With direct access, client must be domain joined. Supports Windows 7, of course, traditional VPN does that. Direct access does it. Always on VPN supports only Windows 10. The infrastructure to run direct access, you must have a Microsoft server called RAS server in your perimeter network. But when it comes to always on VPN, you can, for example, use the Kemp to handle that traffic. If you already have the Kemp, you have the ESP package, yes, use the Kemp to deliver it. And then you don't need to put an Windows server out here. So that's very important and a good tip. But the fun part is the road from Skype for Business to Teams. I have, for the Nordic people, done some previous webinars on how blinQ, where I work, can do this transformation for you. I will do a short version here. But if you are migrating from Link 2010, lots of that out there as well, then you can't migrate in the same way as you can on Link 2013 or Skype for Business server on-prem, but a little bit of Active Directory hacking. You will move the user directly out by ending one parameter in the Active Directory attributes for the users. Done this a couple of times. It's rough. All people are losing the contact lists that they have built up in the Link client and so on. Your meeting will not be migrated. You have to run the migration service manually. But if you are on a Skype for Business on-prem or a Link 2013, get them patched up at the right level. Get hybrid up and running, of course. That's very important. And run, of course, the latest version of the Skype Online Connector, the latest version of the PowerShell, the latest version of the patch for the environment. And then you are good to go. Then you can start moving them from the Skype environment directly into the Teams solution. One thing here is that are you planning for enterprise voice? if you had it on the link or the Skype environment, well, then you have two options: calling plan or direct routing. If calling plan is available in your country, then you can buy the calling plan directly from Microsoft. If not, well, then you need to have that direct routing. That is enabled with a session border controller, either an on-prem in your data center as an appliance, or you can download it as a virtual machine, install it, and do a lot of configuration, just following the vendor's documentation on it. Or you can buy it as a service from your telco. In Norway, we have lots of companies selling this directly through their telcos, but there are also independent solutions like the one blinQ are delivering. But be aware that not all the Microsoft partners know how to migrate from link Skype to Teams. If you ask a telco, seen lots of it in Norway, they send you a one-liner telling you to contact your Microsoft partner. Or you can just ask me on the net, and I will answer you and probably help you, as of course, through my company where I work, blinQ, and we will also do that for you. And it's important, if you buy a solution through a telco and you change telco during the way, you might also need to change the configuration for the Teams environment so that we use the new telco. If you, for example, are planning on in Teams telephony around the world, for example, look at to a partner that can deliver this as a service, for example, in Asia. That's very important. And talk to your telco about how it can be delivered. And one important notice at the end is that it's you as a customer who is the chief in command. Don't let the consultant or the telco or your provider tell us what to do. You are the chief. That's very important. And when you look in summary, with Kemp, you get the TMG replacement, the pre-auth, the single sign-on, the reverse proxy, the multi-factor authentication in always on VPN, eliminating single points of failure, load balancing for VPN service, load balancing for radius service, redundancy and failover, of course. And if you go to KempAX, you find all the information, how to use the product, how licensing options, and cost saving, world-class support. I'm impressed by the support, how fast they work, and so on. And supporting all the platforms, of course, and we will get back to that. Well, questions?
Awesome. Thank you, Kai. That was very enlightening and a lot of great information in that presentation. And I appreciate you delivering and creating all this for us. So we do have some questions here. And first, I want to say, number one, I agree with you completely, Kai. Kemp support is tremendous. And I'm biased because Kemp pays my salary. But outside of that, as independent as I can say, and obviously you more so, Kemp support is definitely one of the best in the industry. So I highly recommend leveraging those guys, and a shout out to all those guys and gals in the Kemp support organization. So anyways, let's go back to the Q&A. So I have a few questions here, Kai, and the first question I have here is a fairly straightforward one, I think. And I'll throw it to you. What virtual platforms can be used to run the Kemp Loadmaster?
Well, since I mentioned earlier, you can of course run it in the Azure and that kind of stuff. You can also download it for Hyper-V, if that is your virtual license. You can run it on VMware, XN, and KVM, and of course Oracle VirtualBox. So you can use it in practical every virtualization platforms. And of course, it's there in the marketplace as well for Azure and so on.
Awesome. So yeah, I mean, almost any virtual platform hypervisor situation, as you listed there, Kai, that's great that it can be used in, as well as in all the various cloud scenarios. So Kemp Loadmaster virtual form can really be installed anywhere from what you're saying. That's really beneficial for the customers with the various platforms that they use. So I have another question coming in here, and this is one I think to leverage your expertise and technical knowledge, Kai, because you are the technical genius when it relates to Microsoft apps. Always on VPN. Why do we use that, and why are we not using direct access?
Yeah, Microsoft has done a lot regarding to always on VPN and direct access. But they are now starting to replace the direct access with always on VPN. One of the great things about always on VPN is that it doesn't rely on any Microsoft Windows servers as an VPN device. Organization can use Windows servers routing, remote access, RAS, as I mentioned earlier, or a third-party VPN solution, for example, a Kemp. Authentication duties can be managed by Windows Service Networks Policy Servers, NPS, and by third-party Radius products. Use that kind of stuff. Kemp Loadmaster supports the IQ version 2, and that is the key element in always on VPN, and that's why you should use it, and it's a part of Windows 10. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'll reiterate, IKE v2 is an important from a security perspective because it's much better in terms of protecting your data and protecting those connections versus the old technologies that were used, like what is in direct access. So I have a follow-up question on this, and this just came in from one of our participants. And I think there are two questions here. I think they're related. The first question is, how big of a Kemp would you need to replace a direct access solution with about 700 simultaneous user connections? So I guess they're asking, what kind of throughput are you needing? And then the follow-up on this is, what about an always-on VPN solution with about 850 users and about 2 gigs of traffic? What do you can you give us some ideas on how to size a load balancing solution for these environments?
Yeah, 800 users, 700 users. I think the VLM 500 is a good solution. You can start on that. The good thing about the VLMs and those kind of services is that you can upgrade those easy as they grow also, but at least the 500, that's the smallest one. If you are planning for large traffic from the outside, then of course scale it up.
Awesome. So what Kai mentioned there, the VLM 500, that's the virtual loadmaster, so the software version of the load balancing instance, and the 500 refers to the 500 megabits of throughput.
Yeah.
And in one of the questions there, you mentioned the participant mentions about 2 gigs of throughput. So if you need to increase the bandwidth, Kemp has the equivalent version called the VLM 3000, which does up to 3 gigs of throughput, 3 gigabits per second of throughput. So those
Yeah.
could certainly match those throughput requirements. But everything else, from what Kai is saying, I think would meet the criteria for this participant's question. So hopefully that answers that. Let me get to another question that's kind of related with this whole thing with these Microsoft migrations. And as you can see, and as you heard in the presentation, there's a lot of interesting things in terms of Microsoft getting rid of older versions of products and implementing new ones, or just completely get rid of things like TMG, where it's kind of just disappeared and they're kind of leaving the consumers and businesses on their own. Excuse me. So here's a question. If we have Link 2010 and want to move to Teams, there are no migration opportunities. Can you explain what you mean by when you say this, Kai?
Yeah, what I mean is that when you are on Link 2010, you can't enable hybrid in the same way as you can in Link 2013 or Skype for Business server, all versions. But then what you do when migrating, you have two options. One is to either uninstall the Link environment. The other option is that I mentioned, do a change in the Active Directory for those users. We did a customer last early this winter in the straight before the COVID-19 hits us. We did that on a customer who was running Link 2010, moving 200 users with some scripting, and we just changed a parameter in the attributes for the users so that the Link environment saw the users as they had been transformed as a hybrid. That is the way to do it. And then you can run the meeting migration service to migrate the meetings from your Exchange calendar so that they will get the new. But when you start to decommission this Link environment, you also need to uninstall every aspect of what's left back in the Active Directory, like all the CS administration and all the CS user groups, security groups, and that kind of stuff. So you have to do a full decommissioning afterwards. That's very important, and that's where many people or organizations skip. They just shut down the server, delete the system, and all these security groups are still in your Active Directory, and that can cause other issues. So please go to the internet, check out how to decom your Skype or Link solution, whether it's an enterprise solution or it's a solution that is just a single standard solution. Do the whole process to decommission the solution at the right way, because it's very important to have a healthy Active Directory at all the time.
Awesome. And I wish we had easy answers for the people listening when we talk about migrations and upgrades.
Yeah,
like going from Link to Teams, because it's not like we just go to our update software and click on a button and it updates and all magically everything. There's a huge process, unfortunately, for a lot of these situations, like going from Link to Teams, because of the legacy aspects and everything. So Kai, thank you for that very in-depth answer and giving us lots of information.
Yeah, one more information about that is that I've seen a lot of companies where they are, for example, have used all the chat platforms that Microsoft provided, from live communication server to Skype 2019, and then has moved to Teams. And during the process, we have figured a lot of things that has been into the Active Directory from the old times, old meeting rooms. And there you are trying to decom your solution and shall remove the last server, and it says can't remove it. There's something in the Active Directory that needs to be removed. For example, a meeting room, a user, a device, or something that's still in the Active Directory after everything else has been moved, and then you can't get rid of the last server in the decom, and that's very important to remember.
Yeah, that's so important to understand that with these migrations, there's a lot of legacy things and things you may not have dealt with for years that you constantly have to understand and figure things out as you do these processes. So that's where blinQ and Kai really can be a huge benefit to your company. To give a little shout out to Kai and blinQ, that's their expertise and they understand these situations. So I strongly recommend that you take a look at their services as well. So I have one last question, and this question, it opens up a broad discussion that we could spend a whole nother hour on, but we'll try to keep it focused. And question coming in from one of the participants is, we use a pair of LoadMaster 3000s, LM3000s, and these are older hardware products that Kemp sold. They do about 1.7 gigabits of throughput. They're gig interfaces. And the question is, would you recommend a separate virtual LoadMaster versus the on-prem physical LoadMaster? So would you recommend that they go with virtual or with physical? What do you recommend that they do with their situation?
I would recommend them to go to the virtual, based on what you're saying, and then of course license issues can be fixed since they have this VLM3000s or the LM3000 was it? Yeah, and of course move to the virtual if you have a virtual platform, hypervisor or VMware or whatever you're on. Move it to that platform, and of course running a virtual edition, if something happens to the hardware, you can spin up, you don't have to take one Kemp, send it to service and get a new one, and yeah, you save a lot of time running it to virtual. That's my opinion, and that's how I see it practical also.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you, Kai.
Yeah.
Going from the LM3000, I think that is easiest to virtual, and the VLM3000 is a great path to migrate to, or if you need to add separate instances, because it does 3 gigs of throughput, which is at least the capacity of this LM3000 hardware that that this participant currently has. But I'll make one caveat. So we're kind of assuming everybody, and I would assume in general, everybody does have some sort of virtual environment where they're running VMware or KVM or running hypervisor environment. So that's, if you're already doing that, is great to go virtual, because all you do is take the virtual machine, the VM, and pop it on your hypervisor, and you're off and running with the standard capabilities, same user interface, same functionality as all the hardware models. But if you or your organization is not used to running things in a virtual hypervisor environment, then I would say maybe you want to go keep that hardware model, possibly, just so you don't have to do all that learning and everything with the software. And in that case, I would recommend the LMX3, X-3, which does 3 gigabits throughput hardware model, and it pretty much complements what you did with the LM3000. So again, yeah, I think virtual is the way to go, is kind of the future of technology, at least in general, at least from what we can see today. 5 years from now, that might change again, because it always changes. But yeah, I would say that spot on, Kai. I think that's a great suggestion.
Thank you.
So I think that's all the time we have for questions today. And again, Kai Stenberg from blinQ on this presentation. It was tremendous. Lots of value information. I greatly appreciate you spending the time to talk with us today, Kai. And any last minute parting words or things that you want to tell us before we end here?
Not really. Thank you for having me. Thanks for the good preparation and everything we had in front of this webinar, Frank. And thanks to the Kemp team for asking me to do this. And I wish you all, when that hits you, safe and great Christmas.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kai, very much for this. And thank you for all the great things that you say. And absolutely everybody have a great Christmas and happy holidays. And again, this is Kemp Technologies. I'm blinQ. We had Kai Stenberg here today talking with us. And please follow us and listen to our future webinars. And our webinars are on demand on Bright Talk. Thank you very much. And everybody have a great rest of the day. Thank you. Bye.